Good evening, I'm Guy Schoen. COP29 is finally upon us. Dignitaries and delegates from all over the world have arrived here in Baku, and there's a sense of palpable seriousness and ambition amongst the people involved in the events, but also a candour and commitment not to shy away from difficult conversations. One man right at the heart of managing this huge challenge is the chief executive of COP29 and Azerbaijan's Deputy Energy Minister, Elnur Soltanov. Elnur, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
On AnewZ. Now, COP29 has been described as the finance COP. It's been described as the enabling COP. How would you describe it?
We actually prefer enabling to finance, but as you know, as per the climate agreements, there are three means of implementation. It's finance, it's technology, and it's capacity building. And finance is definitely the most important issue. In fact, finance is something that keeps this global climate architecture together, right? Because to solve the problems we have, we need collective and bold action. To make sure that we have collective action, you need finance. To make sure that we have bold action, because what we are doing now is not enough to take us where we want to be, you need finance. So therefore, for us, really finance is the thing that keeps the system together. And also, to give you a context, really, what happened in COP28 was about inventory taking, it was stock taking, it's about diagnosis, how we are doing, and we are doing very badly. What is the measure of how we are doing? We need to reach 1.5, right? 1.5 is the North Star. This is the goal, because beyond that, we cannot gamble. We don't know what happened to the world. So therefore, basically, COP28 was about measuring how we are doing in terms of 1.5. The outcome, we are doing very badly. We are moving towards 3 degrees, probably. So we need to course correct. How do we course correct? Well, there's a document called NDC, Climate Action Plan, together with NAPS. They are very important national plans telling everybody what you want to do so that you end up with the desired outcomes. And this is the topic of COP30, right? So diagnosis at COP28, results and plans in COP30. What happens in COP29 is how we join this current bad situation and the situation that will take us out of this conundrum with the help of finance. So finance becomes really Baku platform, and Baku's COP29 becomes really the solution to the both problems that happened before us and that will happen a year from now.
And COP29, like the COPs that went before it, has attracted a lot of scrutiny, a lot of media headlines, and you hit the headlines yourself recently when a BBC article suggested that you had used your role to advance a fossil fuel deal. What's your reaction to that? How would you characterize that situation?
Thank you for the question, Guy. I love chemistry, and I think I owe that to my high school chemistry teacher. He's, I'm sure, in heaven now. My chemistry teacher, he introduced us to this guy, Austrian physicist, Wolfgang Pauli, right? And this Pauli is very famous because he came up with certain properties of electrons as they revolve around nucleus. But this Pauli is also famous with a certain phrase. They say that when a friend of his comes to him and says that a person I know wrote something about physics, could you take a look at this paper and tell me how he did? He takes a look at the paper and he says, this is not even wrong. So this is the phrase he comes up with. Because when something is right, you accept it. When something is wrong, you correct it. But when something is not even wrong, you don't want to respond to that. Pauli didn't respond to that paper. I don't compare myself to Pauli. I think he got even Nobel Prize for the thing that he came up with regarding electrons. But I think my first impression seeing this piece was that this is not even wrong. Let me give you the context what happened, right? So to me, we discussed about 1.5, which is kind of depicted in the Paris Agreement. So it says that we need to try to keep the temperature rise below, well below 2 degrees, and pursue efforts to make sure that it's 1.5. And 1.5 is really the best fighting chance if we make sure that the world is not getting out of control. But the thing is that, as I said before, the plans and current business as usual is not really sending good signals to us. We are really on the wrong path, and this way we might be losing it all. So to me, therefore, what needs to be done is well beyond of what we can even imagine. The amount of resources. If we want to go 1.5, that means that by 2050 we need to reach net zero. But it's not just about 2050. So by 2030 you need to decrease the level of emissions compared to 2019 more than 40%. By 2030 you need to decrease it around 60%. So you need to go along these routes so that we have a fighting chance for 1.5. What does this mean? Again, as I said before, we need every bit and piece of resources, human resources, material resources, intangible resources, if we have a chance to reach this 1.5 goal. So my philosophy is that, therefore, from the very start, from January, as I became part of this team, we shouldn't just confining ourselves to these ivory towers, to these grand bargaining environments. I think we should be individual fighters day and night, 24 hours, engage everybody and anybody wherever you can. Because again, any support you can recruit is going to be needed. In fact, we need probably everything times 10 if we have a chance for 1.5. And again, we don't have any other option, really. So therefore, it has been my philosophy to engage anybody, whoever emailed me, whoever knocked on my door, which is already open. I don't remember anybody who wanted to talk to me and I did not talk to them. So therefore, when my assistant tells me that a certain Asian corporation wants to talk to me, of course my answer was yes. And of course I invited somebody from high-level champions office because they are dealing with the private sector. And I have this project manager regarding decarbonization. 3 of us, we are ready to meet, and then a person appears with a darkened background. And really the first sentence after a brief, probably, introduction is that he wants to invest in Azerbaijani oil and gas. And of course, the reaction we have is we look at each other, we smile tactfully, right? And I'm an Azerbaijani, so this is your guest. He knocked on your door, he wants to meet you. But he's kind of off-key. He talks about the thing that we are not even mentally ready to answer. But I said, you know what, again, what about engaging people? What about really maybe educating? I don't want to sound condescending, but it's about learning and educating really. So my first, as far as I remember, my first reaction is COP29 is not about oil and gas deals. It's about tackling climate crisis. And then this guy keeps talking about oil and gas investments that they are interested in, right? But he's so nice. He's so off-key. He's so kind. He's so humble. And his English is broken. And he almost kind of arouses this feeling of sympathy, and you want to really show him what this COP is about. So to me, as I said, it really is about recruiting every support, every help we can. So I start telling him that if you insist talking about oil and gas, then do understand that these decisions are made at COPs. And the major decision that guides us in this topic is the decision taken at COP28 about transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in just, orderly, and equitable manner. And we try to, and basically it was me, because the other 2 members, they don't even know what's going on. So I really try to give him a context that if he wants to talk about fossil fuels, so this is the environment for him to talk about. So eventually, again, he keeps repeating, and again, we are, and I am personally giving him a context. I'm talking about how Azerbaijan, for instance, reached its peak in terms of oil already in 2010, and how since that time our energy production, oil production has been going down. And this is not for the lack of resources in the Caspian Sea, because Caspian Sea is really rich in terms of oil and gas, right? So if you direct enough amounts of investments, it's a matter of time before you find an oil field. So if Azerbaijani oil production, which is already 0.5% of the world total, is going down, it is also about a strategic choice by the government. So these are the things, this is the context we are talking about. So in the context of these relentless questions about oil and gas investments in Azerbaijan, and with this very kind person, off-key person, probably person who creates an impression of not having an idea about COPs, right? So I'm also kind of talking to him that, well, natural gas also by COP decisions is a transitional fuel, because natural gas, Guy, as you know, and probably, again, I don't remember all the details, but I'm sure that because this is the discourse I have, this is the discourse that I have informed by science, the best available science out there, and the decisions taken by COP, which happens to be the ultimate decision-making authority regarding those three climate agreements we have. So natural gas have very interesting properties, and that's why it's referred to as transitional fuel, right? Because natural gas per unit of energy is about 80% cleaner than coal, for instance. So if your natural gas, for instance, Azerbaijani gas, again, we produce less than 1% of world consumption. Again, these are the things we are discussing, right, with that person also. And in the route that we export our natural gas, like Turkey, like European countries, they have a significant coal in their energy mix. So if this gas goes and replaces coal, that is already decarbonization, unless you have this lock-in effect, unless you don't forget that this is temporal solution. At the same time, natural gas is indispensable almost for incorporating this intermittent renewable energy, especially solar and wind. In fact, probably it's the best solution we have for the intermittency. And now, hark back to the decision at COP28 about tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency. Without natural gas, probably it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to triple renewable energy and to increase energy efficiency. Also, natural gas, again, as you know, this green transition is not possible just with green electrons. You need green molecules. And green molecule-wise, the best option is green hydrogen. But green hydrogen is very expensive. We don't have technology. It's not at scale. What is the route that takes us to green hydrogen? It's blue hydrogen. And what is the feedstock for blue hydrogen? It's natural gas. So these three things make gas really important in energy transition, however counterintuitive it could be for an uneducated person. This is how it works, and this is the reason why we talk about transitional fuel. But also, I tell to this person that there is one big caveat, however, right? Natural gas is very potent greenhouse gas. In fact, kilogram to kilogram, it's 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So any decision regarding natural gas should be taken with consideration of bringing down to zero any methane emissions. And therefore, I'm explaining to him that Azerbaijan, I personally, as an Azerbaijani, I'm very proud that my country became party to Global Methane Pledge, which is about pledging to decrease methane emissions by 2030, 30% compared to 2020. At the same time, our energy company in Azerbaijan became party to Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter, whereby they committed to decrease their methane emissions as soon as possible by 2035, for instance. They are going to end their routine flaring by 2030, and by 2035, they are going to be ending their upstream methane emissions. And SOCAR also committed by Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter to reach net zero by 2050, which is 1.5 aligned, right? So this is the context. We are discussing these issues, and I really feel good that, okay, maybe I have some more important things to do, but when there is this humble person asking unrelated questions, but might be recruited to help this global cause in terms of the fight, preventing climate crisis, why not? Let me sleep 1 hour less, but spend time with this person who's so willing, who is so kind, who is also so not informed, and see how we can incorporate maybe his ideas that is not related and recalibrate them towards something that could be useful in terms of purpose of the COP29. So this is the context really that's happening. And I usually don't, and I wouldn't say things in private that I don't say in public. So when I learned after a couple of weeks, so we get this email from BBC, and it becomes clear that this is not any corporation out there, so this is part of a pre-mediated scheme. And I learned, I didn't know at that time, I learned from BBC letter that actually this corporation that they, undercover corporation they established, it was also in parallel in discussions with our COP office about some kind of sponsorship. I had no idea about that. And they picked pieces from unrelated communication lines to fabricate a story that they already had a script for. Because this guy, when he, of course, keeps asking me about State Oil Company of Azerbaijan, what a normal person would do. He would say that this is not me. If you want to talk to them, please talk to them. And when he humbly asks whether I could help them in terms of getting contacts at our oil company, I said, why not? I mean, this is what people do, right? It's available everywhere. So these three lines, what they do eventually is that they fabricated this pre-mediated story whereby apparently, according to them, there is a link between their sponsorship, their oil or gas deal with SOCAR, and the connection I'm creating for them. So to me, it's really this provincial level yellow press grade fabrication. And that's why I said I really at the start thought that I shouldn't be responding to that. But as they published it, to my surprise, and they have the evidence, however illegal and immoral it was on their side to record without my consent, I usually don't, I don't do that. So I don't have any illegally recorded conversation that we had with this person. So I really don't remember the details, right? But if they have the evidence, and that's the only evidence they have, and in light of all those claims that they allowed themselves to come up with, I think it's imperative for them now to come up with the evidence. Having this certain portion from a certain illegally obtained video, coming up with these creative titles, timing so that they can maximize damage is not something that will fly. So if they come up with the words, and if they don't want to tell everybody that this is pure speculation and fabrication, I think they should come up with the video in its full form. And I say this in a sense taking a risk as well, right? Because I really don't remember all the details. But I know me, I know how my ideas about the climate formed. And in that sense, I feel that I couldn't have said the things that they are alluding to.
Thank you very much. And what then is the right way for us to think about the role for more traditional energy as we make this transition to greener forms of energy?
Guy, I think this question also really relates to the question that you asked about this much ado about nothing, right? So I understand that. So in the world, we are spewing about 54 to 57 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent of greenhouse gases. About 70% of them come from the burning of fossil fuels. Mostly they come from coal, and then it comes oil, and then it's natural gas. 30% comes from agriculture, from waste sector, and from industrial processes. But anything we do has to do something about fossil fuels if we want to reach that 1.5 goal. Technically, Paris Agreement talks about emissions, right? It doesn't talk about production of fossil fuels. So technically and theoretically, if you have technology to capture all the carbon dioxide and to end all the methane emissions from fossil fuel sector, you can still achieve 1.5. But we don't have that kind of technology. Maybe in the future, maybe in the 40s we are going to have that technology whereby just by focusing on emissions we can solve the problem. We don't have that technology and time is not waiting. So we need to pass through those stages by 2030, even 2025, 2030 and 2035. So there must be something to be done about fossil fuels, about their consumption. And to me, it's not really about production or consumption. I don't see any difference between that, right? Whether somebody produces or consumes or both doesn't make a difference. We should think about this global economic system that is based on fossil fuels, and we have to take a decision on that. And we are bound by COP decisions. What decisions do we have? I mentioned this transitioning away. What other decisions we have? Also, we made a decision that inefficient fossil fuel subsidies should be phased out unless they help energy poverty or green just transitions. We made also a decision at COPs, which is binding on all parties, including Azerbaijan, to phase down coal-fired power, unabated coal-fired power. And in fact, Guy, this is also a good point to make that, for instance, Azerbaijan, despite the fact that we have sizable coal resources, we don't use it. In our energy mix, we don't have coal. Many developed countries have coal in their energy mix. And this is one of the reasons why per capita emissions in Azerbaijan is lower than EU per capita emissions. That's why our per capita emissions are lower than world per capita emissions. Because to me, it's not a coincidence. I think it's already because of the strategic decisions that our government has been taking. So when I say fossil fuel, that word itself makes me feel uncomfortable. And I understand many people, including from the civil society, who feel very strongly about this word. I don't like it either. But the climate crisis we are facing is not about belief systems. It's about best available science out there. Because sometimes the belief systems we have, it degenerates into biases, into ideology. And when that happens, we become Machiavellian. We feel that every means out there is justifiable because we know the truth and we don't have to listen to anybody. And then what happens? The outcome is what BBC came up with, right? So because of that, we have to be keeping ourselves open-minded and really benefit from scientific evidence. For instance, what I realized actually reading those pieces they came up with was that apparently these guys didn't know that in 2050, net zero scenarios, there is still sizable use of fossil fuels, including coal. We have that. True, a significant portion of that will be used as feedstock, but at the same time, most of it has to be abated. That's we need to capture all the carbon dioxide, but it's a matter of fact. And when you read, for instance, this Global Witness fabrication, apparently after hearing from me, they Googled it and they say, okay, this is the case. I mean, the fact that we might dislike, which I really appreciate how civil society has been frustrated and angry. I don't have an option to be frustrated and angry. I'm a COP29 team member. But a global citizen, when talking about climate crisis, I understand their frustration. But to me, it's a valuable resource for us to use and utilize in terms of achieving our goals. And we should make sure that it doesn't degenerate in such a way that it comes and damages the very mission it was supposed to be advancing.
Mr. Soltanov, thank you very much for speaking to AnewZ.
My pleasure.